Welcome to the Free to Be Free portal, bringing you spiritual content weekly. Today, we're going into the weekly energetic insights, looking at Taurus, the divine feminine, and connecting with unity. I'm here with my dear friend, Margaret Miller, and she's going to be bringing through her insightfulness and telling us all about the energy insights for the week. Margaret, it's so wonderful to be here with you today.
Thank you, Julia.
You're
I,
welcome.
I just love our connection and getting to play in this way with you. It's really, really wonderful for me as well. Yeah. So yeah, let's dive in. You know, each each week I am looking at the gene key that's associated with whatever part of the zodiac we're moving through, where the sun is, and also looking at the Sabian symbols. And for me, making a connection between that, the gene key of the week and the Sabian symbols that are associated with it, which is usually around 6 degrees of the zodiac, so 6 different symbols, and and just feeling into what kind of story they might be telling, right? That's kind of what we've been up to. And we're, just exploring what what insights that might bring about for us. So right now, the sun is in the second gene key 2, which is the shadow of dislocation, the gift of orientation, and the siddhi of unity. And so just feeling into those words and the energy around them. You mentioned this is about the divine feminine, and that's true. The second gene key is also associated. If you're familiar with the gene keys, you know that it's also associated with the Chinese I Ching, and so the the second hexagram in the Chinese I Ching is 6 broken lines as opposed to 6 solid lines. So the first gene key is 6 solid lines, which is the divine masculine, and the 6 broken lines is the divine feminine. And so this really is about what happens when we embody or allow the divine feminine, the true feminine, in whether it doesn't have anything necessarily to do with whether we're male or female. It's not about men and women necessarily. It's just about the energy of the feminine and the masculine. And so when we look at the shadow energy here, it is the sort of the denial of the feminine. And we have, of course, and throughout the ages, have seen the manifestation and the results of that, abounding, and it has resulted in this energy of dislocation, of being lost or feeling like, or the illusion that we are separate from nature, that we're separate from each other, and that we're separate from nature. And and so and it has caused all kinds of energies of that it really causes the warring energies and the us and them, right, energies, instead of this bringing together, which the divine feminine, really, if you look at those broken lines in the I Ching, it's sort of creating a vessel, right? And you think about the divine masculine as the triangle pointing upward, and the divine feminine as the triangle pointing downwards to the earth, right? You can see that, I mean, both are required, but when you don't have one in balance, or they're both out of balance, really, then you come into this energy of dislocation. And I don't usually bring in the programming partner or which is in this case the first gene key, but I'm feeling called to right now, so I'm just going to go for it. And that is the first gene key is the shadow of entropy, the gift of freshness, and the siddhi of beauty. And so that masculine energy, if it's out of alignment, it's stuckness. It's this unable to move, right? And but when we move into that gift energy, there's this freshness. When we move into orientation, when we come into come out of this feeling of dislocation into and begin to orient ourselves and recognize that we're connected, then this fresh energy is available to us for creation. And so and so orientation in this gene key, there's a lot we can say about it, but what comes to mind to me, just first off, is how in any kind of in many sacred ceremonies, in many different traditions, you call upon the energy of the elements and the directions, right, in order to initiate or to connect or to align or orient ourselves with the earth and the cosmos, right, everything around us, calling in the four winds or the four elements or the directions. And so that orientation is that recognition of our connectedness to the earth and the connectedness, being able to feel what, the sun rises in the east, and the rhythms of our the natural rhythms of earth and the natural rhythms of the seasons and the natural rhythms of light and dark and so forth. And we have, that dislocation has resulted in a sort of a imposition of a false schedule, right? A false rhythm that doesn't match the natural rhythm, like our work schedules, our the way that our life in society, at least in most of the Western world, or developed world, is it doesn't have anything to do with our natural rhythms, like our natural rhythms as mammals, as physical beings on this planet. And and when we begin to orient ourselves, or when we recognize the importance of that, we can then begin to know and experience our connectedness with nature, our connectedness with each other, and our and from that we then begin to, or have many times, um, begin to see and feel and experience more synchronicities in our lives, where things happen at the right times, instead of that dislocated feeling where we're feeling like we're always trying to catch up, we're always trying to, we're always behind, or we're always missing opportunities, or things aren't going our way. When if we allow ourselves some kind of orientation, in each day, for example, we can begin to come into a more natural rhythm, or at least remind our bodies. I recognize that not everybody, can change their schedules to match sort of the circadian rhythm or anything like that. But if we at least are aware of it, and keep acknowledging our connected to nature, our connectedness to nature, and honor that within ourselves, and honor our own rhythm and what our body is trying to tell us at any given moment, and do some of the practices that really, help us to become grounded and oriented.
Is
you
it an
know
orientation within as well as without?
yes, absolutely right. Both. Absolutely right. It's because, you said it as we were preparing for this call. You were saying up, as above so below, you know as without so within, as within so without. And so yes, and this is like, it's so important. Think about, all kinds of yogas and all kinds of practices, physical practices. You have to be so adept, in martial arts, or in, a lot of different practices, at orientation, knowing where your body is in space and knowing where that internal center point is, and then what's to the left of me, what's to the right of me, what's in, what's there in every direction. And and that awareness comes naturally as we allow ourselves to just kind of relax into our connectedness with nature.
And you were talking about that feeling of, I like to call it like being discombobulated. And I think when we're in that state, not only are we not oriented to our body, left or right, and what's around us, but we're not even noticing, not
Yes.
even aware.
Yeah. Yes. And that's, and that is the, I mean, I think that's the hallmark of all of the shadow states, is that we are in the frequency. I'll say it again. We're in the frequency of fear, right? When we're in the shadow states, it's a it's we're responding from fear. And anytime that we're responding from fear instead of love, we are discombobulated. We're out of sorts, and we're not operating from our the truth of our being, of who we really are, which always comes from love. Like the truth of our being, always it comes from love. And so once we even recognizing, oh, I'm really out of sorts here, I'm really, I'm having that feeling of I'm behind schedule, or I'm running around in crazy mode. We have to stop and reorient ourselves to this moment. So it's inside and out, definitely. And so then when we talk about the siddhi, or the siddhic frequencies, then it's this epiphany energy, or this awareness that all of it is all right, and all of it is connected, and that feeling of dislocation is actually an illusion. That it's not really even happening, that we have always been connected, and we're not separate from each other, we're not separate from the earth, it's all connected, even if it seems like it's only connected by these light filaments, or threads. It's still connected. And it's, this truly is where we're headed, in if we look at things from a I don't know, the big picture, right? Then we're always heading back to that unity, where we know that we are a part of the whole, that we are not separate, right? That we are these divine sparks.
What a powerful recognition that we are always connected. And yet it's the awareness that is out of alignment or out of orientation, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that truly is what changes, is our perception. When we can perceive ourselves as connected with the trees. That's why, go out and forest bathe, go out and be with nature, even if only can be with a tree in a park in the city, or whatever it is. Make that connection and feel it and acknowledge it, right? And that helps to orient as well. Anything like that will help to bring us into that energy of connectedness. And I feel like even as things get sort of more and more stirred up in the world and crazier in the world, like there's a lot of people with that awareness, and it more and more and more. And so good for us for doing that. And I I didn't do this last time, but I wanted to bring in Rosie Aronson's Wisdom Keeper cards again. Uh, and of course, we'll have the link for that in the show notes. But here is the card for orientation. Can you see that clearly?
Yes, yes.
Isn't it
Oh,
beautiful?
her art is incredible.
Yes, yes. And so I wanted to, I'm going to choose a little section out of it to read as well. I had, yeah. So my gift to you in this, and the second uh, card here. I come to bring you the gift of orientation. When you look into my eyes, allow me to remind you of the deepest truth, that we are all one. You and I may look different from each other, but deep down, we are the same. Care less about what others think of you and more about how you are a natural part of the whole. Open yourself up to a path of synchronicity as you surrender into my eyes. Don't think too much. Allow the certainty within me that we are all connected in a single unity, that all things happen in the exact right timing, to reassure you that there is no way for you to be outside of the stream of life. It simply is not possible. So just looking into these beautiful eyes.
Oh, just serenity in those eyes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah. So now I want to kind of look at these Sabian symbols. And just as a reminder, there's 360 Sabian symbols, one for each degree of the zodiac. And so, you know, it can be sort of overwhelming to try and keep track of all of them. But if we kind of put them into this framework, maybe there'll be something that comes out of it that's helpful. So we start with 15 degrees of Taurus, and we talked a little bit about this. We're in the Taurus energy, and Taurus is ruled by Venus, right? And Venus, right, is the goddess of love, and right, so it's a very feminine energy, and it is grounded. It helps us, the Taurus energy cares about our values. It cares about our resources. It cares about self-worth. It cares about our effectiveness, our power, and our awakening. And so the very first symbol here is 15 degrees of Taurus, a silk hat, a man wearing a silk hat, muffled against the cold, braves the storm. Okay, and so it's this first symbol here in this second gene key is having the courage to change things, to brave that, to go through that feeling of, like if you look at it, the feeling of dislocation and what's wrong and what's not working, and to do what's required, and to take care of ourselves in a way that helps us to be able to move through that. And the silk hat is, I think in the original description, it's called a rakish silk hat or something like that. So it's, sort of this, he's doing it with style, with his own unique style, right? And so it's like, I'm going to move through this. I'm going to come to this I'm going to have the courage to change and come into this new consciousness. And then the next symbol, 16 degrees of Taurus, is an old teacher fails to interest his students in traditional knowledge. And it's like, if we are not able to bring up to date the traditional wisdom, if we're not able to come across in a way that brings value, or to a new set of ears, right, to this the new generation who has a very different upbringing and a different, a different worldview, then they're going to reject things, that the traditional things that might actually still be very valuable to them if it were translated in a way that made sense to them. And so there's this feeling of the potential loss of something, if we don't, if we're not willing to have the courage to go through what needs to, to let go of what needs to be let go of, and to move forward into the new with the things that still work. So then the next symbol is 17 degrees of Taurus, a symbolical battle between the swords and the torches. And that's sort of symbolizing the tarot, right? The swords is the mind, or the ego mind, right? The ego consciousness, and the torches is the spiritual consciousness. Okay, so it's this battle between the soul wisdom versus ego consciousness, for instance. And so you can see kind of how then this, we can, as we reject that old, the stuff that doesn't work, then we still have to battle. We still have this thing inside of us that is the spiritual consciousness versus the egoic consciousness, right? The soul versus the ego. And they're not really in this battle, right? That's part of this illusion of duality. They're not in battle. They're more in a dance, a sacred dance. And there has to be a balance that comes of those. So then the next symbol, 18 degrees of Taurus, a woman airing a bag through an open window of her room. So she's holding a bag, like I don't know, maybe her purse or whatever, that needs to be cleansed, needs to be aired out. And so it's like this purification of consciousness that has to happen, right, in order for the change to happen. And so it's sort of now pointing towards that reorientation, or orienting ourselves in a new way. Then 19 degrees of Taurus, a new continent rising out of the ocean. Okay, and so this landmass, this new potentiality arising for us. And I see that as what we were just talking about, where it really is a new perception. Maybe that landmass was there all along, and it's just rising into our awareness, or yes, just new potentials happen once we reorient ourselves and become part of the whole somehow. And then 20 degrees of Taurus, wisps of wing-like clouds streaming across the sky. And this is talking about the awareness of the spiritual forces at work in our lives. Okay, the awareness of the spiritual forces at work in our lives that connect us to everything, that really bring us into that knowing of unity. So that's my little Sabian symbol story.
I love how you create the story in telling about the symbology for the flow of the week. And you talked about the old teacher and the concept that he wasn't translating the information for the new minds, right? That have a new world and a new perspective. And Margaret, that's really what you're doing for us is you're taking the insights for the week, the universal energy, and you're describing it in a way that we can understand it and utilize it easily and profoundly.
Well, thank you. Good. That's my intention. Absolutely. So yeah, and I love to look at these things in, there's always a danger of going too far with any of this, right? Because you can be bombarded with symbology, right? And not be able to do anything with it. But I like to, find ways to make it useful and just look at how the universe is providing us with information that we need in any given moment. And in fact, I'd love to here at the end of this to share a little story of synchronicity, because I think this, especially this, second gene key, and really all of these symbols, this, when we're in the universal flow, when we know that we're part of the natural whole and we are connected, then those synchronicities, we become aware of how we're being handed all of these beautiful synchronicities. And
In perfect timing.
yes,
Perfect timing.
absolutely. So I I think I may have already mentioned this, but every Sunday I do a cold dip with my neighbor and dear friend in our pond. And this Sunday we were both having resistance to getting in the water, and she went in first. We sort of decide, we just who's feeling it first, and then we have a little dock and stairs going down into the water, so we just kind of just go down the stairs and submerge ourselves in the water. And I was holding space for her, but I was feeling very resistant for whatever reason. And and I and then she let go of the dock and started swimming, and it's much colder when you move around in the water. And so I got it right then that it was like, oh, that's how you break through the resistance, is just do it, and to do that. And so I when it was my turn, she got out, and she was feeling good, but still kind of in that resistance place. So it didn't feel really that complete to me from my perspective, right? And so it was my turn. So I walked up and I dipped my toe in. And as I dipped my toe in, I had this thought like, don't be ridiculous. You're not gonna get in this way. I mean, I didn't even have time for that, but I ripped off my hat, because I usually wear a hat, and just dove in and started swimming. And I was transported into ecstasy, like into this just incredible ecstatic state. It was so cold and it was so beautiful. The sky changed colors. I mean, it was almost purple. It was it was psychedelic in a way. And the green was just so green. And so when I came back to the dock, and I was just laughing and laughing, and she was laughing too, because I mean it just was hilarious. I was shrieking and laughing, and got out of the water, and I started talking to her. We were standing there, and started talking to her about the ecstatic states and like ecstasy, and how we are designed for that, and that our bodies are designed for these really high frequencies, and how um, there's a someone who's getting close to passing in our family, and how grieving and those kinds of things are also part of that ecstatic they're not separate from ecstatic frequencies. It's not all about joy and laughter in those ecstatic states. It's about the rarefied frequencies. And so was talking to her about that. And this happens to be in the gene keys, the city of ecstasy is, and the gift of delight in the city of ecstasy is my life's work. It's the 46th gene key. And so I was just talking to her about that. And as I was talking, the frogs on the pond started she was laughing really hard because she was saying that the frogs were saying, preach, sister, preach. It was so hilarious and beautiful. I'm going to have to tell her that I shared these things because I didn't really ask her permission, but I'm going to. I'm going to ask for forgiveness or permission. um, so so then as I stopped, I heard in my head, I heard that she wasn't complete. And I said that out loud. And as I said it out loud, she said, I just thought that. And I looked at her and she took her clothes back off, jumped in the water, and really experienced that same thing. Okay, so that in itself was just this beautiful story. But then the synchronicity, this really beautiful synchronicity happened. She went home. I went back to the yurt, got, changed my clothes, got ready for my day. And as I'm coming up the hill and close to the pond again, there is my husband, and he's crouched down at the fence and he's looking at something across the pond. And so I kind of came up slowly and he wouldn't tell me what it was. I kept asking him, what are you looking at? And he's like, just wait, just look and wait. And sure enough, in the pond, at the edge of the pond, was an otter. An otter. And it just so happens that the otter is the life key that is associated with the 46th gene key of delight and ecstasy. And can you believe that? It was just the most amazing and magical thing. And it's just that I think you can probably feel it, right? The ecstasy of that, the ecstatic, delighted, vibrations that having an otter in our pond is just like so amazing. Anyway, so that was my little synchronistic story.
You created the vibration of that ecstasy, and the otter decided to join you.
Yeah. Or the otter was already there and decided to say, okay, I guess I can let you see me now.
Right, right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Mm.
So just thinking about ways to bring more orientation into our lives. There's so many different ways. Of course, just anytime we can connect with nature, um, getting up and greeting the sunrise, saying goodbye to the sun as it sinks down below the horizon, um, marking the beginning and the end of the day in some way. Uh, Actually, taking pauses throughout the day and and thinking about orienting ourselves into what needs to happen now, or what we're doing, or even the idea of segmenting, like as we move from one task to another, right? And completing one and blessing it and letting it go. Those are some of my ideas. I wonder if some things are coming up for you.
Oh, I love that. I love the blessing, the one that's complete, and then moving to the next segment. Yes, and the walking through a door. Walking through a door is another time when you can, if you're going room to room, doing different things. It's another reminder. Yeah. But I also do love the Triple Flame app from the Gene Keys that goes off and reminds us 3 times a day as well.
I love that too. Yes,
Mhm.
I do.
But primarily I find myself resetting when I notice that I'm moving into fear. That's my main trigger for saying, okay, okay, fear. I'm going to reset. I'm going to choose. So I go outside and walk in the grass or open my system to the trees, touch the trees and open.
Mhm.
Or I go inside and use the mindfulness practices to pay attention to the feelings and sounds, the space of my body.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Those are all really, really wonderful ways to reorient and reconnect or feel that, it's funny because it's not really reconnect. We're always connected, but to remind ourselves of our connectedness.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Oh, well, I think you've brought all of us into that really wonderful feeling of ecstasy bubbling inside of us. So thank you so much. I really want to go to the lake now and just jump into the cold water and swim around. That sounds wonderful. Oh, Margaret, thank you very much for sharing your insights for this week. I think that our audience is just absolutely going to love this conversation and what you've brought forward.
Mm, thank you. Yeah, I look forward to it every time.
I do as well. I do as well. And to our audience, please let us know how you reset, what practices you use, or when you find yourself needing to become more aware of the present moment. Thank you very much for joining us on the Free to Be Free portal. And please join our next video for the energetic recalibration for the week. Thank you.
Thank you.